Okay, he's talking about in this section the key words in the Bible, and the key word for September the 10th is salvation. The word salvation appears more than 120 times in the Bible. It was in constant use among religious people of past generations. And while it is not so often heard today, the fact remains that it is one of the most important words in the Bible and among the least well understood. The word salvation in the Bible means perfect health, harmony, and freedom. These things are the will of God for all people, for you personally. And the Bible was written to tell us how to attain them. We gain salvation by seeking God and letting him work through us. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Psalm 27, verse 1. He only is my rock and my salvation. Psalm 62, verse 2. He hath raised up a horn of salvation for us. Luke 1, verse 69. And all flesh shall see the salvation of God. Luke chapter 3, verse 6. Such texts as these are typical of the Bible promises concerning salvation. Salvation comes to a few people gently and easily, but the majority have to work out their salvation with a certain amount of fear and trembling for the time being. The actual way in which it comes is not really important, for come it will when we seek it with our whole heart.
Thank you. Well, we're fortunate enough today we're going to have Lori Kay give us a talk. Lori, what was the topic that we announced?
It's about how do we trust our imperfect actions?
Go for it.
Okay. So I was thinking about the fact that there's so many different ways to approach a talk. And I really, really love, especially a spiritual talk. And I really love satsang, which is the Indian word for, it's actually a Sanskrit term. And it is a gathering of people just like us, just like we're having a satsang right now. The word satsang is derived from two roots, sat meaning true, and sangha meaning community. So it can be translated as associating with good people, or simply being in the company of truth. And it refers to the act of gathering with like-minded, uplifting people, especially those on the spiritual path. Now, I'm getting a knee replacement on Wednesday. So I'm going to come at this talk from a satsang kind of perspective. And when Mother is around, what happens in her evening meetings is somebody gives a talk. And it's always a talk about where they've been, what they've discovered, where they've fallen or tripped and then awakened to something they didn't know before. And I love that. I love that approach, rather than the idea that here, I know something that you don't, and poor you, you have to, raise yourself to it. Not that we've done that. I'm just saying that that's sort of a traditional thing of, I know a truth and you don't. And I, fortunately, here what we do is we explore instead. So I'm going to be a little personal about it. And I'm getting a knee replacement this Wednesday, and I put that off for 6 months because I don't want to have anything to do with knives and my skin. I don't want to have anything to do with all of that. So I tried to heal vibrationally and energetically, and I made progress. But the pain and the discomfort and everything else ended up going to my lower back and the outside of my leg. my quality of life has been really hampered. So I finally let go. I made that decision. It felt extremely imperfect. I was unhappy because I do believe, and I believe it in a feeling sense, that we can have, do, or be anything we want to as spiritual beings having a human experience. And I fell into, I think, a bit of perfectionism or just wishing to push against having surgery, which I'm not happy about. I don't think anybody's thrilled about surgery. So I felt like I was letting myself down by going to a physical answer rather than the spiritual. And so for 2 weeks, I was really out of frame. I was really upset that I was choosing straight physical healing. I thought, oh my God, I'm screwing everything up for myself. This is terrible. And then as I kept investigating and listening to what I myself was saying to me, I realized that all of that was just more resistance. It was resistance in that it was just making me tighten instead of ease up. So that wasn't going to heal anything. And I knew I had to find a different perspective, a perspective that would allow me to be okay with this. I didn't want to go into it with a sense of screaming and loathing and fear and everything else. I didn't want to go into it that way. Not that I won't be nervous. I mean, what are you going to do? But I just didn't want to go into it feeling really miserable. I didn't want to go into it anticipating that I would do not well, horribly even afterwards. I want to believe instead, I want to set myself up for success. I want to know that I'm going to come out of it and I'm going to heal really quickly because I tend to do that. I tend to heal quickly. So how do we, this is really one of the major points of this talk tonight. How do we get to okay with our seemingly far from perfect human choices? Choices that for some reason, any reason, doesn't matter, we feel like, ooh, I wish I hadn't done that, or oh, I don't like this choice. I don't know how to make it. What do we do with that stuff? How do we get to that emotional place of, I feel good about this choice? Instead of saying, well, it could go well or it could go bad. It's probably going to go bad. How do we get to that place of, I'm good with this choice? I mean, if we truly 100% believed in life, we just 100% believed that we're on the river of goodness and no matter what happens, it's all directed, we're all good. If we 100% had that kind of faith, that kind of belief, we'd never, ever worry. We wouldn't worry about anything. In fact, I have to wonder if I did believe 100% that everything that happens is the will of God, what would that be like? Does that mean I don't still have to put some thought into what choices I want to make? No. But it does mean that I won't be hanging myself on some hook of, oh, crud, I think this is probably horrible. So that perspective of saying that whatever happens is God's will is one of the perspectives that Amachi talks about, that you can give yourself, your life, so profoundly into the hands of the divine that everything that happens, good, bad, in between, is the will of God. That's a beautiful thing. There's something in that that makes me feel like I can let myself off of the hook. But there is a danger zone in there, I think, which is that if I think that if something bad happens is the will of God, am I also thinking I deserve to be punished for something? So I'm not the person who will benefit at this stage or any previous stage of my life. So up to this point, I won't benefit from that view as a complete focus. There are some who will. And that's another point I want to make. The paths to God are how do you number them? How many paths are there? Well, there's as many paths as there are souls. That's it. Your path is unique. Your path is your mystery and your journey and your beautiful opportunity. And the question, as usual, is how do we get there? How do we find that path? How do we do this? And you know, I believe that the easiest and quickest way to living a life of quality and a life that honors and experiences the ever presence in different degrees, however we can, of the divine, is to feel our way there. Because the divine is not just a concept. It's our being. And as humans, we feel that. We feel. And we're aware of our feelings. We can reflect on our feelings. So we can be aware at a very easy level of whether we're resisting or we're allowing and receiving, whether we're feeling better or worse, and making choices based on those things, trying to find our path of least resistance and faith in our unfolding. So let me give an example about this. Just last week, I was talking to my therapist and I was telling her how much I loathe the idea of surgery. As I said that to her, I felt come up within me the complete opposite. I felt like a brilliant sun bursting into presence inside me. It was this moment of like joy and positive anticipation and happiness. It was amazing. So the end of my sentence to her of, I really don't want to have surgery, was, but there seems to be a part of me that's really excited about it. So I had to sit with that. Okay. Does that mean that my imperfect choice is right? What I could say is that Abraham Hicks is right when they say that whatever we feel in the negative, our inner self feels in the positive. Always. Every single time. It's kind of mind-blowing. I love thinking about it because I'm still working on this. Like, talk to me about this. So in other words, when I'm really, really, really pissed at you, my inner self is loving the heck out of you. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful, crazy thing. So when I'm about to go into surgery and feeling frightened, my inner self is thrilled and cheering for me and for the event itself and for its outcome, whatever its outcome. So what parts of our imperfect choices are floating around in our reality? Well, there's the human, the tendency we have to expect the worst in order to try to prepare to ward it off. And there's the other part that is the part of us that is always established in looking at the good, looking at better, knowing that we're actually on a river of good. Parts of the journey get very dark, right? The moon goes behind the clouds and we can't see where we are on the river and we're like, oh my God, I'm doomed, And then suddenly it gets lighter and lighter and now we're in a different part of the journey. So trusting the entire journey seems to me a big, big deal. So I felt, having felt that upsurge of like, oh my gosh, there's the inner me is going, this is going to be great, made me feel better. But what do we do when we have no such revelation? In what do we place our trust in our choices then? So I went looking for an answer to that question. The first person I went to was Joel Goldsmith, but he's so intense. He was just so intense. So his thing where he says this, be willing to be used by God. Be willing to be used by truth. Be willing to be an instrument through which truth reveals itself. But do not attempt to use God. Never try to use God or truth. If you understood the nature of God, never would you pray to God for anything. Now, what he's talking about is if you knew that you are always in receivership of all that God wants to give you, which is everything. But that goes back to that previous thing about everything good or bad. It's God's will. So that doesn't really cut to the chase, meaning it doesn't get me to a better feeling place. So I went looking for quotes about choice to see if I could find some elements of trusting imperfect choice that would really give us ground to stand on. So here are some that I found. And as I was going through them, I ended up making one myself, which I'll share with you too, because it suddenly dawned on me. So Nelson Mandela, may your choices reflect your hopes, not your fears. Turns out that all of the time I was trying to heal, I was actually fearful. I was pushing against, I was resisting. And when I gave in and said, okay, I'm going to have the surgery, now I'm allowing. So even though it seems counterintuitive, oh, I'm going to go get this surgery when I'd rather just heal, thank you. That's the path of least resistance. Interesting. Here's a quote by Anonymous, who we all know so well. You are free to make whatever choice you want, but you're not free from the consequences of the choice. So that's one of the elements. If I look at the consequences, is it going to potentially free me? Is it going to potentially lift me? Is it going to potentially do good for everybody as much as I'm able, knowing that I'm somewhat limited in all that I can do right now? So I like that as one aspect. Let me look at the consequences. The consequence of having this surgery is that I'm going to be able to walk and dance and exercise and be free again. So I like that consequence. Here's another one from Anonymous. The 3 C's of life: choices, chances, changes. You must make a choice to take a chance, or your life never changes. Clever. So here's where I went, oh, and something in me went, you know what? Every choice we make, whether we think it's right or we're not sure, every single one is a leap of faith. So here's my quote. Every choice is a leap of faith. It is up to you to build your trust in the endlessness of your life so that you know that when making a choice, right or wrong is not the only measurement. You must measure also by your own chosen building blocks of why. Which leads me to my last quote from Abraham Hicks. You can never get it right, and you can never get it done. We are eternal beings. Now, as for the surgery, my quality of life was affected negatively for too long. And if I were a person who prayed to God to please release me from the pain or please release me from the situation entirely, and it hadn't happened, that would test my faith and my faith in and understanding of God. But I didn't pray. I just did my energy work, pulling in the divine energy, letting it do whatever it's going to do. Now, the proactive choice I make as I engage with this process is to set my emotional set point to the practical positive, to humility in letting each moment be whatever it is, to letting myself continue my path of being growth-oriented, meaning I make use of every moment, even if it's kicking my butt. I had another realization. I may be able to have, be, or do anything I wish as a spiritual being in a human body. But there's a reason why the timing may not be what I want it to be. So I was thinking about that. I was thinking about, what if you had a pile of like 10 rocks stacked on top of each other? And the rock that is number one is surgery, which I didn't want. And rock number 4, let's say, is the energy healing rock. And I want number 4 so bad that I go, I'm not going to pull that first rock off of the pile. I'm going to try to go for rock number 4 without tumbling all the other rocks over. Didn't work. So there may be other aspects of healing that may need to happen first in order for me to discover things that I want to discover that I couldn't discover if I had gotten a complete energetic healing. I don't know. That's, I think, really the eye of the storm, if you will, the way of saying, I have to trust my imperfect choices. Here's the thing. If I go ahead and I go, okay, I give in, I'm choosing number 1, the surgery. What if number 1 ends up resonating in some way I could not have done as sleekly through rocks 1 to 6? It's possible. It's amazing. And what an amazing thought that even with all of the thoughts, the brain power, the written wisdom that has come before us, all of that, we still don't know. We still don't know. Maybe this Wednesday morning and moving forward, I'll find something that obliterates a whole bunch of stuff. Maybe there's something I'll find that changes or frees the direction of my life. That's the part of this. That's a leap of faith. And that's the part of this that is trusting my seemingly imperfect choice. So I leave you with this question. How do you trust your seemingly imperfect choices? Can you let go of they need to be right or wrong, but knowing if they are right or wrong for you? What do you lean on internally and externally to know that you're going in a direction that is not resistance and is less resistance and more allowing? How do you do that? How do you trust your own seemingly imperfect choices?
Thank you. I want to toss one thing in. As you were talking, I was reminded of Sister Pepper, the originator of the church, who, talking about praying for healings and miraculous healings, she said, sometimes the miraculous healing is going to come through an earthly source, like a doctor. You don't know. And so she was never one to say preclude options. And I think that's what you're saying too with this. And for all we know, maybe the combination is taking you someplace that we have no idea.
Love that.
Which brings me to, there was a fellow who was preaching a kind of self-healing called the path of least resistance. It's been many years ago, and I'm just thinking about this, where part of his argument was every time you're fighting against something, it's like a rubber band. So you're going to fight against it and it's going to bring you back. And what you do is step completely outside the issue. I thought about that in years, so someplace.
Wow.
Anybody else with some thoughts to share?
As you were talking, Lori, I was thinking of a bow and arrow. I don't know how many people have shot a bow and arrow, but you have to have a lot of strength and resistance to draw that arrow back. But once it's released, that power of resistance propels you to that higher next level.
Interesting. Thank you.
That is brilliant. So all of these months of me resisting is going, now that I've stopped resisting, I'm going to be like, I like it.
And you know, and that's what the divine shows me a lot of times, or the universe is. There's a saying, I don't know where I learned it from, but simplicity in the complexity of his word. Meaning the scriptures, but there's the simplicity and the complexity of it. I often get the question, how do you do what you do because it looks so hard? Well, and I go back to the Jewish sages and scripture, and I try to find the simple things. There's, this verse in scripture, ask and it shall be given unto you, seek and you shall find, knock and the door shall be open unto you. Well, we've all heard those, most of us have all heard those verses before. But if you take the three words, ask, seek, and knock, okay, and then the first letter of each of those words, ask, seek, and knock, what's it spell? What are those three letters spell?
It's ask. That's amazing.
The simplicity and the complexity of his word.
Yay. Thank you. Lori C., you're up next.
Yeah, you're asking, let's see, how did you word it? You're asking how do we get to okay about our imperfect choices? It made me think about, when my back broke, I had a choice of getting surgery very quickly or being paralyzed for the rest of my life. So when I remember, by the time I got to the hospital for the surgery, I had this thought in my mind of my life is basically over unless I do this. So I just kind of like just close your eyes and jump out of the plane kind of thing. It's like, I'm just going to trust that someone else is going to take care of this. And I learned that, the very mindset of trusting and not fretting about it helps the recovery process. Of course, the drugs helped a lot too, because I didn't care about anything. They gave me so many narcotics. But it took me a year to realize that when they told me after the surgery that I would have to get used to a new normal, they had me on so many drugs. A year later, I realized, oh, wait a minute, that means there's a list of things I'll never do again. So over the years, I've come to accept that. I'm just glad I can walk. But another answer to your question that came is, let's see, at Progressive, Anna Marie Melodia did a really nice sermon on August 27th, and she called it Be Afraid and Do It Anyway. And in the middle of her sermon, she tells this story of something she was kind of in a corner. She had to face it. And she said, sometimes you just got to do it scared. You just plow into it, do it scared, and it'll be all right. And it turns out to be all right, and then later she has a new coping skill. But if you want to see her sermon, it's on the website.
That's gorgeous.
It's well worth watching.
Yes, Phyllis.
I started reading a little book. We don't have many books around the house, but every now and then there's one that is very compelling, and I don't know who leaves it sitting out, but I can guess. And it's written. The author is a Quaker, and I've started reading it. And a Quaker friend, and I think his name is Bert or Brett, Bill or something like that. And he's writing about how the language with the Quakers is, if the way is shown, and talking about, listening to the still small voice and allowing yourself to be still. And I know for myself, as you were talking, Lori, I was thinking about some big decisions in my life that I've had to make. And, I was like waiting for praying and seeking for guidance and, waiting for a big answer. And, no really big answer came. It came down to, I had to make a decision. And so, but this is after prayer and seeking God's will and healing and seeking healing and all of that. And and so I just think, integrating whatever we're dealing with into our ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find, knock and the door will be open, and then going forward and making your best decision. And that's just somehow how it works. So I'm just kind of confirming what Ellie and what I'm hearing everybody say. So thank you so much. This was really appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing that with us.
Lori R is next.
Thank you, Phyllis.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a beautiful talk, Lori. I think something I found that really helps me a lot, and it's the word freedom. When it comes to us making choices, when I had religion in the forefront and not spirituality, I found a lot of my decision making was centered around guilt. And it was when I lost the legalism from religion and came into finding the freedom of seeking spiritually, I realized that there really is no right and wrong answer to many questions that we have. It's a journey that we take. And even if we make a wrong decision the first time, we always take a journey around that. We learn something from it. It teaches us new things about ourselves or others, depending what the circumstances are. But when we make our decisions with freedom being involved, I find that a lot of the guilt is never there. I find that it's easier to come to conclusions that way. And I find that I can lay out sometimes simple steps to reach a conclusion, especially when it comes to the harder or more important decisions in my life. Sometimes it's a matter of just taking a piece of paper. Sometimes it's a pros and cons to look at the good, look at the bad, and make a decision. But I think sometimes we have to remember that there's freedom in our choices, and that everything we make is not necessarily a right or wrong answer. It's what's best for us in that moment. And I kind of use that type of thinking. And when I get stuck, I go back to gratitude every time. Gratitude always catapults me to joy. And in joy, again, I find freedom, and it helps with that decision-making process.
OMG, freedom. Thank you. That's a huge gift to me. I appreciate that, Lori.
You're welcome.
Okay. Dear God, we thank you for this community, for bringing it together every week, for giving us all people we can share with as equals, as seekers, as those who seek to represent a loving God. We thank you for watching over us as we depart from here, for giving us insight and wisdom as we encounter the challenges of each day, for giving us the faith that whatever we encounter will come out ahead on the other side. We thank you for the love you've given us, the love you've given us to share with others, for the wisdom that we've found so far, the wisdom you'll be teaching us as we walk through this world. For all this good and all this love, dear God, we say thank you, thank you, thank you. And we all say, Amen.